Welcome to The Explainer. We tend to think of art as something, well, something that just hangs on a wall, right? But what if it could do so much more? Like, what if a piece of art could actually save a species, or spark a revolution, or even help build the future? Well, today, that's exactly what we're going to dig into the hidden and honestly incredible power of creativity.
All right, so let's just jump right in with a pretty wild question. Can a painting, just one painting, save an animal? I know it sounds a little out there, maybe even impossible, but stick with me because the answer might just change the way you look at things.
And to find that answer, we're going to take a trip. We're heading to three totally different and, yeah, pretty unexpected places. We're talking about a painter studio, the bustling streets of a city, and even a super high-tech science lab. In each spot, creativity is being used as this incredible tool for change.
Okay, first stop, we're in the studio of British artist Sophie Green, and we're looking at this absolutely stunning, hyper-realistic portrait of an African wild dog. The piece is called The Watcher.
And when you look at it, the effect is, wow, it's just so striking. It creates this really powerful, really personal connection. I mean, you lock eyes with it, and it feels like the animal is literally staring right back at you, pulling you right into its world, right there on the savannah.
But of course, it's not an animal. It's paint on a canvas. And that right there is the whole point, the core of what Sophie Green is trying to do. She's not just making a picture, she's crafting an entire experience, one that, let's be honest, most of us will never get to have out in the wild.
She actually said it herself. I want my artwork to be a window into another ecosystem, so people can feel they're face to face with the animal. It's all about giving us that rare, one-on-one moment. She's trying to bridge that huge gap between our world and theirs, because she believes that feeling, that connection, that's the very first step to making people genuinely care about conservation. So, how does she do it? What's really fascinating is her process. It's super unique and honestly almost scientific. She even says she's more analytical than creative. She uses quick-drying acrylics, which is kind of unusual for this style, and works on a dark background. Then she builds up all these incredibly thin layers really, really fast, going from dark to light. So it's not really about the brushwork itself. It's about understanding how our eyes perceive light. That's what creates that mind-blowing 3D effect. And get this, the name of her collection is Impermanence. And that title has this really powerful double meaning. On one hand, yeah, it's a stark warning about how fragile these ecosystems and species are. But on the other hand, it's also a message of hope. It's saying that our problems, even huge ones like climate change, they aren't permanent either, if we decide to act. All right, so from the quiet, intense focus of an artist's studio, we're going to do a complete 180. Let's head to a place where art is loud, it's raw, it's born out of pure necessity, and it lives right out on the streets. We're going to Kinshasa, in the Democratic Republic of Congo.
So back in 2001, you had these art students who just completely rejected the traditional stuff, plaster, resin, all that. They were tired of being told what to use. Instead, they decided to create with what was literally all around them, trash. It was a full-on countercultural movement, making art that spoke directly to a huge problem in their daily lives, the absolute mountain of waste. So their materials, they literally transformed the garbage of our hyper-consumerist world into their canvas. We're talking about everything. Tires, exhaust pipes, plastic bottles, old antennas, discarded CDs, even rubber slippers and empty tins, all the everyday stuff that you'd see clogging up the city. Now, here's what's so brilliant about this. Each sculpture uses a very specific kind of trash to protest a very specific problem. It's not random. For example, Jerika Kinga uses broken radio parts to talk about the spread of fake news. Pressy Numbi grabs old automobile parts to protest the import of garbage cars into Africa. And Philone Mambu uses electric wires to highlight the lack of electricity and the very real dangers, like kidnappings, that come from it. The medium is the message. Okay, another big leap now. From protest art made out of literal garbage, we're now going to look at an ancient art form that is, believe it or not, unlocking some of the most cutting-edge technology of our time. Origami started out pretty simple, mostly for ceremonies in Japan centuries ago. Then you had masters like Akira Yoshizawa who turned it into a true fine art. But then something shifted. Artists like Tomoko Fu started to feel like they weren't just creating something from scratch. They were discovering these incredibly complex patterns that were already hiding inside the paper. And that feeling, that intuition, turned out to be spot on. A mathematician named Thomas Hall said, There are rules at play that allow this to work. For him, that was the key. He looked at a folded paper crane and didn't just see a bird. He saw a system, a set of mathematical rules. And that single insight, it completely unlocked the massive scientific potential of origami. One of the biggest discoveries to come out of this was something called the Miura-Ori pattern. It was actually dreamed up by an astrophysicist, Koryo Miura, and it's basically this very specific way of folding, a series of mountain and valley folds that lets you take a massive sheet of something, collapse it down into a tiny compact package, and then open it all back up with just a single tug. And this isn't just a cool theory. This exact pattern was used to pack the solar panels for Japan's Space Flyer unit, which launched way back in 1995. Think about that. An ancient art form solved a huge modern aerospace engineering problem. The Miura fold made it possible to cram these gigantic solar arrays into a rocket and then just pop them open in space, effortlessly.
So, if it works for something as huge as a solar panel in space, what about going the other way? What about getting smaller? Well, scientists are now pushing this art form to the absolute limit, down to the microscopic scale. How small are we talking? 0.1 millimeters. That's the size of the nanobots they're building right now at the University of Pennsylvania. We're talking about robots literally no bigger than a speck of dust. And at that tiny, tiny scale, you run into a huge problem. The normal rules of mechanics they just break down. Friction is a monster, so things like gears and wheels, they just don't work. They can't turn.
So what's the solution? You guessed it, origami. A fold is a fold. The physics of it works the exact same way whether you're folding a giant solar panel or a microscopic robot. So folding gives scientists a whole new toolkit for creating movement at the nanoscale. And this is a total game changer, opening the door to technologies in medicine and manufacturing that we used to think were pure science fiction.
Okay, so let's just take a step back and connect these three amazing stories. We've been from a quiet painter's studio to the loud city streets, all the way to a cutting-edge science lab.
In each of these places, we've seen art do something incredible. With Sophie Green, we saw it build empathy, connecting us emotionally to problems that feel a world away. With the artists in the DRC, we saw it provide a voice, turning literal garbage into powerful protest. And with origami, we saw it unlock innovation, giving us a whole new way to solve seemingly impossible challenges.
And that leaves us with a pretty big question to think about, doesn't it? If art can really do all this, what problems are we failing to solve right now simply because we're not being creative enough? Maybe the hidden power of art is a resource we've only just started to tap into.